So, if you're anything like me, I'm sure there's been times throughout your life where people have wondered, why do you like horror movies so much? What is it about these things that you gravitate towards? Does it say something about your psyche? Yes, but it's not what you're inferring. So, today I want to talk about why we love horror movies. Hey, what's up, everybody? Nick here, and today I want to talk about horror movies, why we love them, what it says about us, what does the science say behind it, and just kind of give you some experiences that I've had throughout my life. I want to share them with you. Now, this is a really multi-layered discussion because there are many different reasons why people might like horror movies. So it's not one size fits all. And one of these reasons may be the reason why you like horror movies, or it might be a mixture of kind of all of them. So I kind of want to dig into that today. And this has really been kind of bouncing around my brain recently. Now, as I was growing up, believe it or not, my mom, who was someone that loved horror movies when she was growing up, saw all the classics in theaters and exposed me and my siblings to all of them. Well, even then, she would question when I was a teenager why I started to collect some of this stuff. What did it say about me? Oh my gosh, am I going to turn into young Mikey Myers? And I always felt like when people say things like that, they truly don't understand, because it can be quite easy to draw your own conclusions when you're kind of ignorant on the topic that you're speaking about. There are a lot of different reasons why we love horror movies. And the first one is stimulation. And that is stimulating the mind. And it can be stimulating to your brain in a lot of different ways. See, there is an emotion that really drives us as people. And that emotion is fear. It makes us feel alive. A lot of people lament that they hate fear. They hate to be scared. But throughout our lives, in different ways, we find ways to feel that, whether we know we're doing it or not. You could be skydiving. You could go into a place that's supposedly haunted, or you could watch a really scary movie by yourself in the dark. Any one of those reasons are because you are trying to stimulate your brain. You are trying to get that rush. You're trying to access that chemical in your brain. You want to feel fear. Why? Because fear makes you feel alive. There's something about being a human being and going through the motions and living day by day and thinking that your world is your world and you don't really think about anything else around you, and you're not actually thinking about the fact that like one day you're not going to be able to think these things and feel them. So we seek it out in different ways. We seek out that excitement because we can't wrap our brains around certain things. So stimulating the brain and feeling that feeling of fear is the first reason why a lot of us seek these kind of movies out. Another one is the experience of it. See, there's a lot of stuff you'll see in horror movies that you know you're never going to experience in your life, or hopefully you don't ever have to experience. Whether that be the macabre, grisly actions that are taking place on screen, or whether it be ghosts, demons, whatever it is. We fear that we're never going to see that in our lives, or we actually are thankful that we're not going to. So we go to these things because we want to know, well, if that were real, or if I were to see that, what would that be like? It's almost like training your brain at the same time. In case I do see this, I want to be prepared. What would I do in this situation? Now, you may not be thinking that actively while you're watching a horror movie, because I know that I don't, but it is happening in the back of our minds as we're watching these movies. It's almost like you're taking notes, mental notes, preparing yourself for a situation that you're probably never going to encounter. But we can live vicariously through these characters and these situations and never have to experience these events in our day-to-day lives. Another reason we seek these movies out is to address some fears that we have within ourselves. Now, this is kind of dark, so bear with me here. I'm somebody that struggles with anxiety, and I have pretty much my entire adult life, even in my teenage years. It's something that I've never dealt well with. Death, particularly, is something that freaks me out. I don't like to think about it. And I feel like a lot of us that have that fear love horror movies because it's almost like we are trying to wrap our brains around death. We're accessing the dark recesses of our minds, the fears that we have, and we are watching it play out fictionalized because we almost feel like maybe it'll help us understand or cope with some of these dark fears that we have. And death being one of them, and my major one, horror movies help me access that fear and almost kind of deal with it. Ironically, it is like an itch you can't scratch. You're going to keep going back to it and hoping that it's going to eventually help you wrap your mind around some of these things, but it's never going to happen. So it's almost like a high that you keep chasing, but you keep chasing it nonetheless. But the larger point here is whatever those fears may be, we have a lot of fears that we don't really bring to the forefront and talk about a lot in our lives because they might make us anxious, we might not understand it, we might think that people are going to judge us, and these kind of movies help us to cope with that. Another reason we seek out horror movies is educational. Let's just be honest here. There's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of metaphors in some really highbrow horror movies, or just movies that are written well. It doesn't have to be elevated horror. You can find a slasher movie that's really smart and self-aware, and it can really make you think and can almost be an educational experience. We do that a lot with these kinds of movies. We learn new things about ourselves, about our species, about the world around us. See, if you're looking at a movie at face value and you're just here for, oh, I want to see boobs and blood, that's awesome. No shame whatsoever. More power to you. But a lot of these movies actually are multi-layered. It's like an onion. You're peeling back layers, and if you're paying enough attention, you can actually learn some things, and things that you can take with you throughout the rest of your life, believe it or not. And a good horror movie can really play on some of these symbols and these metaphors that are prevalent throughout our lives. But I honestly think the biggest reason, the thing that brings a lot of us back is, it's the thrill, but it's also trying to understand the things that we can't understand. And one of those things is death. One of those things is afterlife. It's kind of all in one there. As humans, we are wired to only have knowledge of this being, us being in this plane of existence, feeling our feelings, having our emotions, and just going through our day-to-day lives. We don't know what death is like. We don't know what after death is. We can have beliefs, we can have, whatever we want, evidence, religious beliefs, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to know until you know. And as a human being going throughout your day-to-day life, you're never going to be able to fully grasp that. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, that a lot of us go to these movies, because it helps us cope with those things. It makes us almost try to understand, or maybe it's just giving us a false sense of security. But the thrill at the same time is kind of bringing us back. Even if we don't realize that we are trying to deal with some of these fears and cope with some of these anxieties, the thrill is the thing that masks all of it. Oh, I come here for the scares. I come here for the, the fun, gore. But in reality, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, there's something going on back here. And if we actually stop to think about it while we're watching some of these movies, we'll be able to admit that and talk openly about that. See, I've believed for most of my life that horror movies are one of the most enriching experiences we can have. And as film goers, it's probably the genre you want to seek out more than anything. Because not only do you get the baseline thrills, but there's so much more there. And I think at the end of the day, it helps us deal with things that are innately inside of us, things that happen around us. It makes us try to understand the evils of this world. It tries to prepare us for some of the things that unfortunately could befall some of us. And it also helps us cope with fears and anxieties that we have buried deep down inside of us. I have always hated, and I hated it when I was growing up, that people would kind of look down their nose at you when they find out that you love movies like this. Because people would just immediately go to like oh, are you a psycho? Ha ha ha. I know some of you guys have heard that. We've heard that for years. The media did that for the longest time. Movies are making people evil, and it's making people do things because they're speaking about things they don't understand. And that satanic panic, whatever you want to call it, it's easier. Let's get a target and let's vilify these people. And let's say that the reason they like something is innately evil and we have to stop it. That was really just people not understanding it, people not caring to understand it, people just wanting to find an enemy and running with it. loving these movies, I feel like it actually says something about your intelligence. I think you are someone that doesn't have to worry about blurring the lines between fiction and reality. You have a very firm grasp on fiction, and you have a very firm grasp on reality, and those almost never come close to merging. You know what's real and what's not. You know when to turn your brain off and when to turn it on. You know how to live vicariously through someone without ever feeling the itch to do the same. The fact that for decades and decades, people have said things like that about people like us, people like you that are watching this video. Honestly, if you ever hear that at this point, just let it roll off your back. I mean, seriously, at this point in 2024, if you've still got people saying that, a lot of that is rooted in some like deep-seated religious beliefs that even as someone that is a Christian myself, I find absolutely asinine, and I find it a crutch. But I often find that is a crutch a lot of the time for hating things you don't understand. And this is no different than that. Look, at the end of the day, don't we want to feel alive? Don't we want to feel scared? Don't we want to feel thrilled? Don't we want to kind of deal with some of our demons, some of our fears and anxieties? Don't we want to learn things? Don't we want to, God forbid, have ideas of how we would get out of terrible situations? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, horror movies are the movies for you. They always have been, they always will be. No amount of obnoxious vilifying by ignorant people that don't even care to try to understand the genre and the love that is behind it is ever going to change that. So, this is a little bit different for me because I've never really dived into why we as people love these movies. But I feel like for some of you watching this, this might have been cathartic. It might have answered some things for you, or it just might have made you question some things. And maybe, just maybe, it made you go, you know what? Yeah, my mom, she has no idea what she's talking about. My friends, they have no idea what they're talking about. Look, guys. This is a genre that was made for everybody, and I will maintain it is probably the genre that is most going to expand your mind. Yes, I said that. I'm sure some people are going to have a field day with that in the comments. I don't really care. But I want to hear down below what you guys think. What are the reasons that you like horror movies? Have you had these experiences throughout your life where people just don't understand why you love what you love, and they don't ever try to understand? I want to hear it all down below from you guys. Make sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.